model is about doing things together, there's no reason for anybody to go there. They did. Okay. I saw Russ sitting here. He's always a good model for me. Can you hear me though? I have a terrible voice. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually in Barcelona had more time to spend on these issues. I don't know what happened with my schedule, but this is very important for IUCN. And I was listening for a few minutes, and although Andrew now works for another organization, everything that you say we totally agree with, and I know that everything that CI said. You know, don't forget that IUCN's vision statement is a just world that values and conserves nature. And the word just is really important. In our mission, we are to influence, encourage, and assist society to use nature and natural resources in an equitable and sustainable manner. So for the last 64 years, IUCN has really been devoted to the issues of equity and justice. And I think now we need to do a little bit more than we have before. We've always had a voice on the council from representing Indigenous peoples, but we should have more voices inside IUCN. There are several motions in front of us and lots of encouragement. And one way to get involved in IUCN in a very concrete way is to have more members and certainly more individuals in our commissions, and I know C's been doing a lot about that. But really, I would love to see the infiltration of local knowledge and Indigenous people's great ideas inside all parts of IUCN. I'd love to see more people with that experience in the Secretariat. Don't forget the Secretariat is not only in the headquarters in Switzerland, we have a distributed Secretariat, and we have some, but not enough, I think. So you need to help us to make sure that the thinking of Indigenous peoples, which is so important, is infiltrated into our system too. The door is wide open, our hearts are wide open. And so you will see that we will be, I guess, if you're not here, we have a focal point in the Secretariat that works on these things, but you will see that the rights-based framework is really at the heart of the new program that we're presenting to our members. And we have to fight a little tiny bit, I don't want a few of us, to make sure that this really has a central position in the program, but it hasn't. And it wasn't an impossible fight. You know, to get new ideas across, we just need to assist a little bit. But so remember that the program has valuing and conserving nature, of course, but through the vision of a just world. And then making sure that the use of nature is done through a governance mechanism that is both effective and equitable. So again, it's at the heart. And then, of course, the solution that nature brings all of us, and the knowledge that's required for those solutions from all of us. And much of the knowledge lies in the hands of people from the communities themselves, from Indigenous communities, living right in the forest, living right in the hills. So I think IUCN's door and heart the door, I should say. Remember what Ashok said in the opening. He said, we're an organization that also has a heart. And I think, so I just hope that you've got good recommendations for us, and for those of you who are staying at the members assembly, we'll make sure that the program is infused with this knowledge. I didn't prepare a speech. I think my team prepared a speech, but I've spoken from the heart, and I'm sure everything that I've said is in there, but maybe it's more elegant. So thank you very much for including me in this, and I'm sorry that I can be stay for such a short time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your inspiration, and especially since you didn't read any speech, may I say that you did use the right terminology. You said Indigenous communities or communities. You didn't just say Indigenous. It's so important, you know, these things matter a lot because a lot of struggle has gone through your communication. So
meaning we will have one person, and I don't think anybody can represent any of our communities. I don't think any woman can represent all women. But we do have one person on the World Leaders Dialogue who will be giving Vicky, who many of you know. Yeah, and so do come to that because I'm sure she will bring in different perspectives. But help us make sure that we have the names and addresses and people from these communities who can help us do our work better. But thank you for your compliment.
So we're now at the point that we would like to enter into recommendations. But before I ask our panelists to share their most important recommendations, I would like to ask our audience whether they want to make a comment or raise a question and address it to any of our speakers. It's in the back. Please identify yourself. Okay, I will give you one minute.
So I'm Ken Wilson from the Indigenous Fund. Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate everything that's been said today, but I don't think we've said enough about power, because I think it's crucial to these relationships. And I think what we've seen in recent decades is that the environmental movement has a general moved from a position of powerlessness, and through huge amounts of marginalization, through a huge struggle, has managed to get closer to power. And that's been a fabulous victory at one level for the environmental movement, because finally we feel we can start to influence important processes that are no longer on the margins. But in that process of getting closer to power, we've created an inequality with Indigenous peoples movements, other local communities and so on, who are still, by and large, very much marginalized. So we're in a funny situation of people who still often have a mentality that they are struggling, for rights and margins, who are suddenly much closer to power than people who should be in the natural balance. And I think this causes is one of the reasons for these tensions. Simultaneously, in that process, we have gone from being, students, unfunded activists, to having major multi-billion-dollar industry out there of environmental organizations. This is absolutely fantastic, but it also creates a deep challenge for us, which is that to run those operations, we have to have access to very significant amounts of funding. Those very significant amounts of funding are no longer coming from the marginal public making small donations. They're coming from the major holders of economic and political power. And we are accountable, so I'll be quick. All right, we are increasingly accountable to them, and that makes it very difficult for us to be accountable for outcomes with Indigenous communities and other local stakeholders. So this is, I think, unless we confront that, we won't, I think, be able to find a way in which we can restructure our relationship with our natural partners.
I would like to take one more question. The time is chasing us. So one more question and comment, and then as our panelists close with recommendations to take in to respond to these comments.
I'm Peggy Smith. I'm with the Commission on Environmental, Economic and Social Sustainability for Social Policy. And following up from a previous comment, I wanted to ask the conservation organizations, are your donors requiring you to recognize Indigenous rights? If they are, how is that affecting the way that you're doing things? And if they're not, how does that affect your programs?
May I ask now our panelists, as we wrap up and make recommendations, to take in and respond to these. Who would like to start?
Thank you. We would need maybe some hours to put all the recommendations there. But of course, I think through what we said and some elements that was said, were said here, refer to listening or learning through the practices. So one recommendation that I had, and I have been reflecting on this for many years, is the duration of the actions. So we need to have long-term processes and programs to be able to incorporate the dialogues and the mutual understanding. And in the case, again, as I said at the beginning, it's easier for me to speak about the Amazon. But just to refer to the beginning, although we had been trying to do a lot of things in the past, after we had defined those principles, what we did was try to mainstream that in what we do. So we bring that as part of our strategy designing, and maybe exactly what we need to strengthen now is the accountability to the indigenous people. So I think that is, we are trying to do that, we are approaching that. By the way, Jen Springer here is who leads that for the network. She's been kind enough to invite me to speak here because of my practice in the Amazon. But she's who leads the whole data network to shape this process, that program. So I think that coming through, establishment of principles, defining it into strategies, and then go and check to the projects and programs, we do have time to correct ourselves and adjust and include the dialogues and understanding. So in this case, after 4 years of designing the strategy for the whole Amazon, we are now trying to bring the partnership with Koika to a different level. So it took for ourselves 4 years to achieve that, to change that. Let me mention to you that only the question of source of fundings. In general, I am not obliged to do anything particular with that. So I would say that at this point, it has not been the funding that has been defining what we do in the Amazon with these people right now. On the water era, we are trying to find the money that allows us to do that, and that has been difficult. So it's a lack of money that's in certain sense guiding us not to do some certain kind of thing. So it's not, you should or you should not discuss with these people, but it's the pressure that you need to deliver in 6 months something concrete, and you protect there or something that brings us the problem. Sorry for being low.
Yeah, just I thought that last question about funding was really good. And actually, I agree with Claudio that for us too, not too many of our donors specifically ask us to work with Indigenous peoples and Indigenous people's communities. We do because we want to, but I think it would be a good recommendation to remind the donors, the Christians in fact are different, but to remind donors that this is really an important part of the solution that we want to bring to the global problem.
Sure. Actually, I'll respond to 2 questions first. I sort of gave a recommendation, which is that we for international work, third-party funding comes from bilateral agencies. In those cases, there are safeguard policies that we're expected to respect. But safeguards is sort of the most common standard for how you practice conservation in the field. For the 2/3 of our funding comes from private donors, there's a small percentage that are directly concerned with our work with Indigenous communities. And the challenge for us is to be able to take that small amount of interest and leverage our practice throughout the whole organization to affect everything we're doing with the dollars in the door. As to the conversation on power, that's the point I was trying to get to by saying in my opening remarks that we have a challenge quite often not being a transactional approach. Because in that sense, we don't take the time often or don't regard the power relationship on the other side of that table who we're dealing with. Because in a transactional approach, you don't think about, are they more powerful or less powerful, only are they capable of contracting. So I think that's an area of weakness for us that we need to improve our practice to understand the story we're working with Red. We're taking the time to understand how what we were advocating could adversely impact or empower the communities that we're working with, can change our practice, and in fact, to strengthen our practice and find a mutual accountability for both of us. But it takes time to think through those power relationships, which doesn't always come first to a science-based organization where we tend to think about biophysical units more than think about socioeconomic units, and certainly not sociological units.
Concluding with, I would say I would recommend mainly two things. I think 5 years ago something really landmark did happen, the adoption of the declaration, which required a shift in the thinking and the way of operating. And to my humble opinion, this shift in the thinking and the way of operating is yet to happen. What we see much more around is you have this old thinking of sort of welfare logic, whereby these people, depending on the goodwill of either the government or non-state actors, are sort of granted or have something paid back to them, or a fraction of tourist revenue, or it's a wide range of this sort of welfare. And as the declaration is actually asking for a shift to a right guiding logic, whereby state and non-state actor will be acting toward indigenous people in an understanding that the peoples are entitled to rights. The whole logic is completely different when one is reacting as doing a favor, when is acting as actually responding to a right. And that shift is yet to occur. It's not just a law is there. I have mentioned the legal standard is really complicated. Absent is yet to occur on policy, is yet to occur on programs, including on budgetary approaches. That would be my first one. My second chair is another thing I have said, is the awareness raising. So this is something going really from the African examples. It took us a long time to explain to people why should indigenous people be given particular attention. I remember that the conversation that you said I was in an official mission to Congo, and we were meeting the president of Congo before the country passed the law. And one of the questions we put to us was like, a country living in poverty, many people don't have a school, not many communities have access to that. Why should Congo design a special program addressing a new section of its national application? And one should answer to that question. How do you advocate for indigenous people's rights within a sort of generalized poverty context? And this has been the problem is that indigenous issue has been looked at as a social issue, which is not. Indigenous issue is not just a social issue, it's much more profound than that. And a number of literature have actually made links between indigenous claim and the decolonization. It's not just about picking up people, or just giving them a fraction of tourist revenue. It's much more, it's recognizing people as human beings and therefore entitled to the same rights, including land rights, property rights, health care, and so on and so forth. That is where this whole century long discrimination and exclusion of indigenous people comes from. And I think that's why the awareness raising is really, it's yet to explain that to many statements. Thank you.
Bueno, yo cuando pudiera, digamos, solicitar hacer recomendaciones, sería hacer una lista de las recomendaciones. No pudiéramos terminar, hay muchas. Pueblos indígenas, al menos para fortalecer estas alianzas estratégicas con objetivos Pero me parece importante que, sabiendo que la lucha en realidad es política, es política, sobre todo desde los pueblos indígenas. El ejercicio de los derechos de pueblos indígenas, su adopción, no han sido pues como resultado de las voluntades muy caritativas, generosas desde los estados nacionales y organismos internacionales. Estos han tenido un proceso realmente de mucha presión, de mucha incidencia política por parte de los pueblos indígenas. Creo que ahí organismos de cooperación aliados a la conservación han desempeñado un rol importante. Y la lucha, el trabajo de incidencia política, esto apenas está tomando fuerza en los países. Tenemos muchísima legislación que evidentemente en los países existe, pero que en ellas no se integran, no se contemplan aquellos elementales derechos que